Our Italian adventure so far has taken us to the cities of Pisa and Lucca. Now it's time to explore even more of Tuscany. This is Travelcaster, the travel pod that takes you there. In the last episode, we took a look around lovely Lucca, the medieval hill town in the heart of Tuscany, teeming with tourists and sights galore. We went up a tower, we discovered some architectural delights, but today it's time to go somewhere a little bit more off the beaten track. Most of the tourists in this region go to one of two places when they get here to Empoli station. It's about half an hour from Pisa. They either go on to Florence with all of its beautiful artworks, or they go over to Siena. Siena, of course, famous hilltop town for the horses that go around the town square, made even more famous by that James Bond film. But in the middle of July, with this heat and this number of tourists, I'm going to take a bit of a diversion. And that's because my friend Mel has made a special recommendation. She said, you must go to San Gimignano. Where on earth is that, I said. She said, it's in the Tuscan hills near Siena. You must go. So that's where we're off to today, San Gimignano. Roughly translated, I think, as the patron saint of pyjamas. No, that's not true. It's also famous for a local wine, which I hope to taste later. So I've come here to Empoli station. It's about half an hour from Pisa Centrale, and I'm going to change onto the train that's going to Siena, but I'm going to get off halfway through. So having taken the train from Empoli, we've now changed at Poggi Bonsai, which stands for hills and small trees. Poggi Bonsai, if you think about it. And we change onto a bus now. It's the number 131 that's going to take us up to San Gimignano. And after the bus ride into the Tuscan hills, here we are, San Gimignano, the city of beautiful towers, which were built, says my guidebook, in the 13th century, both as a display of wealth and to serve as private fortresses. One of the best preserved medieval towns in the whole of Tuscany. Although the peace and quiet of this square, just behind the main cathedral, belies what's really happening down there. Come with me. Because as you enter the town from the Porta di San Giovanni, the St. Giovanni's Gate, you'll come to a whole array of tourism on a massive scale. There are shops lining the street, there are cafes, there are restaurants, but there are loads of pretty sights. These towers that I just mentioned are everywhere to be seen in the distance. Well, this town has loads of churches, which is appropriate because the crowds today are biblical. I've escaped from the main street, though, to the Chiesa di San Francesco, the Church of St. Francis, although only a little bit of it remains, dates back to the 13th century. And you'll notice it because of its very distinctive pale wall and stones compared to some of the other buildings all around. Although it's not quite what it seems, because when you walk in, you'll come through a door into a store selling olive oil and local produce. Everything's a tourist attraction here, it really is. Let your eyes follow the shape of the tallest towers and you'll come here to the Duomo, the cathedral, the basilica, which stands proudly in its own square with 3 or 4 towers dotted around it. Now, although there are a couple of cafes that you can sit down and have a drink, there are also quite helpful archways, giving some useful shade from the midday sun. In fact, the townspeople here set up little chairs for people to sit on, so you can have a gelato, go into one of these covered areas, and immediately feel the benefit. Beyond the Duomo Square, head down Via de San Matteo, and you'll find more restaurants, but this time maybe a little quieter than they've been at the other side of town. This is because it's there's still loads of tourists around, but fewer of them tend to venture down this far because they think there's nothing down here. However, I found a nice little place called Boboli. It's a bakery and bistro combined, which means all things baked. And it's amazing what you can do with a focaccia, everything from a sandwich to a pizza. I've just had a delicious pizza topped with ham and pistachio nuts. Not the usual topping I would perhaps expect, but it was delicious. By the way, tourist prices do apply here at this time of the year. A pizza, a glass of the local wine and a soft drink came to €24 at lunchtime. If you want to see the biggest attractions, including the cathedral and some of the towers, you'll need a day pass. It comes in at €10, and actually it's good for 48 hours. So if you're coming back the next day, or maybe even staying overnight, it'll give you access to plenty of places. There are a few churches and historic sites dotted about that are free to get in, but many of them are quite private. So I've just been in St Bartholomew's Chapel, beautiful little place, but there's a definite big sign on the door saying for prayer only, no photos. This, ladies and gentlemen, is Giovanni Terrini, described as the divine comic of this town. If you're listening to this and you speak Italian, drop us a line and let us know what he's saying. Well, it was a long old day going to San Gimignano, but returning now on the train from Empoli, let's look back at what we've achieved, because those 2 train journeys and the bus up into the Tuscan hills and the experience of having lunch and a taste of the local wine in San Gimignano came in at about €70. Bearing in mind this is the high season, so perhaps if you come at a quieter time of the year, it's going to be cheaper. And I took a look online for a semi-private tour, one of those small groups that you can do in a minibus. That too expected you to get to Empoli under your own steam, and then for what was called a unique experience, well, the price was going to be over €200. And just think about that. We've seen all the sights, we've eaten the food, we've drank the local wine at a fraction of the price that you'd pay for a guided tour. One of the great things about independent travel, yes, it takes a little bit more organisation on your part, but you'll save a heck of a lot of money, and you can do it at your own pace. That's what I really like about it. And there are loads of places in Tuscany that you can explore by train and by bus. Just stick the destination into your Maps app on your phone and it'll give you a guide of how to do it. That's going to wrap it up from this edition of the podcast. Don't forget, if you'd like to know where we've been and what we did when we got here, check out travelcaster.blog. Subscribe to the podcast and join us again soon for some more Travelcaster, the travel pod that takes you there.